Hello, my name is Spencer, and in my podcast called The Dictionary, I literally read from the dictionary, but add in my personal comments and stupid jokes to make it more interesting. Episodes are family-friendly, short, and air every single day on basically every podcast platform. Come join me on this journey filled with edutainment.
Hello and welcome to How Did This Not Get Made?
This is the podcast all about the movies you never saw, the scripts that were never written, the ideas that never even made it to the page, and the films that couldn't even get on a streaming service. My name is David Spencer.
My name is Daniel Kaka.
My name is Michael Hunter.
And my name is Alexa Quizon.
Now, wait a minute, Dan. I thought we were done for this season.
We are done with the season, but we have a moral obligation to give to our fans because we are a podcast about unmade media. And something that I wanted to share specifically in this time is something that has been affecting at least those who are subscribers of HBO Max specifically. But I wanted to talk and make a specific episode all about the merger of Warner Brothers and Discovery and just kind of take a step back and just kind of look at the bigger picture so that if you are at a dinner party and someone asks you and be like, hey, you hear about the HBO merger thing, or like, why is it that my favorite cartoon, Mighty Magiswords, like, why is that no longer on HBO Max? You'll be like, well, actually, this is what's going on here. But this is going to be a different format on how we're doing the episode. Yes, we're going to be going through my notes, but this, I think, is the first time that we've actually done an in-person recording.
Yeah.
Now, we are doing this because we had done 2 recordings today. We did a Patreon episode, and we did an episode of Pod Media Special. And I figure since we're all here, since we are all consumers of media, I think it would be great to have a commentary and hear your voices and hear what you think about this merger and just kind of get your opinions and at least help me figure out what you think is going to be the future of Warner Brothers, or Warner Brothers Discovery as what it is known now.
I think this kind of came about because we were in the middle of recording the season when all of this news was breaking. And obviously, as a podcast talking about movies that weren't made, to hear about movies that would now not be released, it was like, oh, this is very relevant to what we were talking about. And I think, Dan, you were following it closely and doing research on everything that was happening. I think it's partly because there's a story there that we might cover later, but we're waiting until some of the stuff solidifies.
I mean, we can make that announcement because we tried talking about it before, but the Batgirl movie was one of the most significant movies that was canceled, and I'll discuss more details about that.
And we would be stupid not to do an episode about that.
Yeah. We wanted to do that Batgirl episode, and I decided to back out of it just because stuff is still developing.
Yeah.
I think it's too early to do a full-on report about it, and the one thing that I really want out of it is the script. If we can somehow get a hold of the script, and then we can do the full How Did This Not Get Made production of putting together a synopsis, a treatment, so that you can actually experience the movie in your ears and determine for yourself, hey, was this a good movie? Was this a bad movie? Did they make the right decisions? Did they not?
Yeah. But we still have all this great research that we don't want to go to waste.
Yes, we have so much research. Now, before we get into that, I just kind of want to do a roundtable of what is your experience with HBO Max? And Michael, we will start with you. What are you experiencing with HBO Max?
First of all, petition to have this episode or segment be called How Did This Get Unmade? Because that's basically what HBO Max is trying to do, but we'll talk about that. The thing is with HBO Max as the streaming service itself, I love the service. Like up until this point, the library alone, the actual app itself functions really well.
Wow.
Compared to other apps,
I feel like compared to other apps, the HBO Max is like technically the worst. I think the library is the best. Every time I pause or have to rewind or something, it's like the whole app crashes and I have to start it all over again.
Yeah, I guess. But then when you also look at Peacock, for example.
Oh, okay.
Peacock, every single time you try to do that, you will absolutely get crashed. Also, if you like subtitles, get ready to have to set subtitles on for every episode. In the grand scheme of things, it had a great library, a decent app, but it's bittersweet now.
Yeah. Alexa, how about you?
I actually like HBO Max's UI a lot.
I think the UI is good. And I will say about the UI, I love that it doesn't loudly autoplay a trailer while you're scrolling through stuff. 'Cause
Yes.
Boy,
Yes.
howdy, do I hate that other streaming services do that.
Yes.
Is Too Good and Birdie on HBO Max?
For now.
Yeah, I love HBO Max because it gives me all of my queer cartoons. We've got Harley Quinn and we had Tuca and Birdie.
Mhm.
And there was like a night where we couldn't choose which queer cartoon talking about an orgy we wanted to watch.
Because both of them had an orgy episode the same week.
Yeah, and it was like it happened that same time. It's also my way of catching up with shows that, you know, have been on HBO that people don't watch anymore, or how I can watch the episodes of shows that just aren't great anymore, but they had one good episode that still sticks with me, like Girls.
Hey, I was really into that show as
I
well.
was into that show. The characters themselves became people that I just couldn't relate to anymore, but there's this one episode that becomes like a short film. It's the one with Marnie goes back with her ex-boyfriend for one night. I forgot what it was called, but it was a good episode. And of course, Insecure was on it, so I had to finish it there. It's also where I watch Legendary. Basically, I just like that it has all of my reality shows, it has my trashy shows, and it has like good quality cartoons. That's where I get all of my awesome content.
Yeah, I mean, I think HBO Max has a fantastic library, especially when it comes to movies. Like anything that rotates through HBO is already like, it's great that that's all in one place. You know, Warner Brothers obviously has a massive library of movies. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate about it is the Turner Classic Movies section, that it has a lot of older films and classic films, and it's doing a pretty good job at, well, I mean, it seems like it's doing a better job than other services at putting those films in front of people's faces. Some of that stuff you can find on places like Netflix, but boy, is it buried. I like that aspect of HBO Max, and I think so far their original programming has also been really solid. I loved Our Flag Means Death. They've been doing a good job there content-wise. I definitely think it's got the best content library of any of the other streaming services.
Also, one thing I wanted to just mention too, especially during the height of the pandemic, the multi-release,
Yeah.
where it's like in theaters as well as same day on the
Yeah.
platform, really appreciated that. Like
Yeah.
for myself, and then also my partner who is immunocompromised, having that access to see these movies that we wanted to see. We saw King Kong, you know, we saw these movies in theaters and we're like, good, now we can actually follow up with that
Yeah.
without having to possibly die.
It was also good to watch movies that I didn't want to pay a ticket for, but I was just
Yeah.
curious to see how it was on my
Space
own.
Jam 2.
Yep, that's how I watched it. Well, I hate watched it, but
Everybody who watched it watched it, Dan.
Yeah.
I think I have to agree with you all. They have a spectacular library. Something that I need to bring up for me personally is like being a DC fanboy.
Yes.
It just made me jizz in my pants.
Yeah,
It just
Dan was Aquaman for Halloween once, and you took that seriously.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, you got the tattoos.
I love the content that's on there, and Warner Brothers being one of the oldest movie studios, of course they're going to have just a vast library. I love that they pay attention to the older films, but like the Criterion Collection, a lot of the movies, they make it a
Yes.
point to put it on there. When we did our Godzilla episode, I did not know that the first era of Godzilla was part of the Criterion Collection,
Yeah.
and thus all of those movies, all those Godzilla movies were available on HBO Max. I think doing this show, we see a lot of movies, or maybe we just gravitate to a lot of movies that are canceled through Warner Brothers. And because of that, a lot of the properties are on there. And it just makes my research a lot easier. Weirdly enough, Blade was on HBO
Yep.
Max as well.
Yep.
The whole trilogy. And I was like, wow, Marvel property on. But this is, I mean, Marvel before it got bought up by Disney. So I don't actually know who owns those specific Blade movies. So yeah, HBO Max has just been this streaming service that kind of broke the mold in a lot of ways. Like we understood what it was through Netflix. We understood like through Disney Plus, but like you're also viewing streaming services through the watered down lens of Disney Plus. And I know that they've been trying to introduce more like adult themes, things like when they brought on like Jessica Jones and Daredevil and stuff like that. So they're putting disclaimers on there, but like you still have that. And in the US specifically, we do not have the star section, which is, I know, when they have like the Touchstone movies or like anything that's geared more towards adult.
Oh, that's what that's for.
Yeah.
I was just like, why are there better movies on Stars?
It's because Hulu isn't available in a lot of other countries.
Got
So
it.
for
Okay.
us, we have Hulu, which is where they can put Hulu Originals, which is just disguised as like, that's just another part of Disney.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Touchstone movies can be available there as well for like R-rated Touchstone movies. So it's a different experience, whereas HBO Max, you are basically running the gambit. If you want to watch as much children's programming that's on there, so like Sesame Street, a lot of their programs are on there.
Yeah.
But then if you want to watch more adult related items, there's definitely plenty to choose from, especially with like Game of Thrones. Let's go over some of the research that I found. But I'm going to start off pretty recently with what got everyone's attention towards HBO Max, because I didn't realize that the merger had happening around like 2020, but like we never really focused in on them until, I'm going to say specifically, August 3rd, 2022. So that's when they announced that the Batgirl film was canceled. So DC was originally planning on including Barbara Gordon in the Harley Quinn driven film Birds of Prey. They left her out in pursuit of making her own solo film. Yeah. So the first draft of this was written by, how did this not get made, all-star Joss Whedon. He wrote a draft back in 2017. This is around the time that he was working on the Justice League.
Yeah.
And in 2018, it had a page one rewrite by Christina Hudson. Now, she wrote Unforgettable. She also wrote Bumblebee, Birds of Prey, and the new Flash movie. Adil El Arbi and Bilal Falal, they were actually hired to direct the movie. So they directed Snowfall, Bad Boys for Life, but most recently, in one of my favorite Marvel editions, Miss Marvel.
Oh, yeah.
Yay.
The first episode of Miss Marvel is my favorite Phase 4 MCU thing. I think the whole as a show gets a little messy in the middle, but that first episode, like the pacing and the editing, very Edgar Wright. The fast pacing and the way the camera is used, and they do all these cool things of like they're having a conversation and what she's talking about is appearing as street art animating behind her.
Oh,
and
it's
it's
so
so
good.
cool.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's
I love it
amazing.
so much.
I'm sorry. I thought there was like 2 sets of directors for that. Because there was like the 2 guys that directed the first and last episode. And then there was like the
Oh.
2 women that directed most of the middle episodes.
Those 2 guys did 2 episodes, and then there's Amira Menon, who did 2 episodes, and Charmine Obaid Chinoy, who did 2 episodes. And I apologize if I'm butchering those names. Please correct me.
So just by stating that, I just want to say, like, it seems like they were in good hands.
Yes.
So this film, Batgirl, it was originally planned to cost $75 million and was going to be an HBO original, meaning that the movie would be exclusively released on Warner Brothers streaming platform HBO Max. Now, to portray Batgirl, DC was considering Isabel Marced, Zoe Dush, Haley Lou Richardson being a close contender. But overall, it came to Leslie Grace. The villain Firefly was to be played by Brendan Fraser.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is kind of odd because he's already in the DC universe as Cliff Steele in Doom Patrol. Now, to connect the film to the DCEU, J.K. Simmons was cast to play Jim Gordon, Barbara Gordon's father, and they hoped that Ben Affleck would reprise his role as Batman, but he declined because DC done him wrong. Instead, Michael Keaton was cast to put on the cowl once again ever since he hung it up in 1992 after Batman Returns.
Wow.
The movie had completed filming and was in post-production when the news came that the film was being canceled, a decision that was made by Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav. The film's budget had increased to $90 million. Part of that had to do with they were filming during the pandemic, and that upped the cost because of safety protocol.
Yep.
And this was nearly complete. They were basically in either like the early stages of post-production or like mid stages of post-productions. News is still coming out about that. Now, Zaslav's reasoning is that he wanted WB to focus more on theatrically released films, which Batgirl was not planned to be. And that spending an extra $9 million on the film for it to be theatrically released was not worth it to the CEO.
And my last question for the both of you is, what's next for you two?
Batgirl. Oh.
Here's how.
Didn't I? Inside voice, outside voice.
There's a lot of people who are like trying to give Brendan Fraser a big comeback right now.
Yeah.
He was pushed out of Hollywood for awful reasons. He's got this prestige Darren Aronofsky film, but this was going to be the big audience pleaser. Nobody's going to watch the Darren Aronofsky movie, but everybody's going to go watch Batgirl, and this would be like such a big deal.
It would have been a really big deal. Although I will say that if you were looking for Brendan Fraser content that is quite entertaining, Doom Patrol is amazing.
I've heard good things about it.
Doom Patrol is the same creator of Umbrella Academy.
Okay.
And it has very similar vibes. So if you like
Wait,
Umbrella
from the
Academy,
TV show creator or the same comic creator? But Doom Patrol first appeared in 1963.
Umbrella Academy, that's the new property created by the guy
gotcha.
from My Chemical Romance, whereas Doom Patrol,
Gotcha.
he works on the
Yeah.
show. Editor Dan here with some fact checking. So Gerard Way, who you may know as the lead singer of My Chemical Romance, his involvement with the Umbrella Academy and Doom Patrol are strictly through comic books. So he actually created the Umbrella Academy comics, which was later adapted into the Netflix show. He is an executive producer on that, but he was not the developer of the show. He was simply the creator of the original comic. Now with Doom Patrol, he was involved with the comic Doom Patrol. He actually helped write Volume 6 and the run Weight of the World.
I was just listening to a podcast today, and they were talking about how when the X-Men comics first came out, it was just a ripoff of Doom Patrol. X-Men was not popular at all for years because it was just a Doom Patrol ripoff.
So Doom Patrol is fantastic. Go watch it before it gets taken off by David Zaslav.
By the media villain of 2022, David Zaslav.
For a future episode, we will be covering Batgirl, which I discovered before. Hopefully there's a script that's leaked by then, and possibly a handful of other films, TV shows that are going to be canceled in the Warner Discovery merger.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be a topic of interest as well. So for now, I want to focus on the Warner Discovery merger. What happened? What do we know about it? What got canceled? And who suffers and who benefits from this?
We all suffer. Art suffers.
So there are some things that I need to clarify and understood before we talk about this. First is HBO. So HBO was a channel that Time, yes, the magazine, invested in after the company invested in cable. So cable was not actually something that people were interested in back in the 70s, and the channel was created to drum up interest. It was a subscription-based channel that would give you access to movies and sporting events from the comfort of your home, thus the name Home Box Office. Mm-hmm. Over the course of their early development, Time invested so much into HBO that they ended up owning the channel. When it came to buying licenses for movies they wanted to exclusively air on their network, they would often lose money doing so. So to counter this, they began investing in film productions to have the right to air their films on their channel. With the help of Columbia Pictures and CBS, the three companies actually created a new company known as TriStar. Now, HBO has made a few spin-offs like Cinemax to compete with Showtime, and they attempted to launch a comedy channel called the Comedy Channel, the same time that Viacom launched their own comedy channel called Ha. The two combined and created Comedy Central. Viacom later then bought out HBO in 2003 and have full ownership over that now. What really made HBO unique is that they don't have commercials on their program. Thus, they don't have to answer to the censorship of advertisers, which means their content could be much edgier. Thus, their original content is much more mature and creators have much more freedom. You can see this a lot in their earlier content like The Wire, Sopranos, and Sex and the City.
Yep.
Around the time HBO started in the 70s, WB had the Movie Channel, which was similar to the model of HBO. In 1989, Warner Communications was hoping to acquire HBO by buying out their parent company, Time. After Paramount attempted to block the merger twice and put in their own bid as a hostile takeover, WB did come out on top in 1990, and the merge with Time created a new parent company, Time Warner, which is where we got that from. Yeah.
Oh.
Right?
Oh, okay.
This is all like coming together now. So
Yeah.
all of those logos that you've seen in the beginning where you're just like a Time Warner company,
Yeah.
this is where that came from, was just trying to buy HBO.
Oh, wow. It's all connected.
Yeah. There's also many tentacles of what Warner Brothers owns. There are three divisions. There's the picture group, which is movies, the television group, TV, and entertainment group, which is just basically everything else. Under the picture group is WB Pictures, New Line Cinema, Castle Rock Entertainment, DC Films, Warner Animation Group, a small share of Spyglass Media, and half of Flagship Entertainment. Under television is WB Television Studios, Alloy Entertainment, Telepictures, A Very Good Production, Cartoon Network, WB Animation, William Street, I didn't know that, Warner Horizon Unscripted TV, WB TVS International, and Hanna-Barbera. Under entertainment, we have the WB Digital Networks, WB Theater Ventures, Turner Entertainment, Water Tower Music, and 30% of Fandango Media.
Wait.
That I thought was a little strange. So in 2018, AT&T acquired WB for about $85 billion. In May of 2021, Discovery CEO David Zaslav and AT&T CEO John Stankey struck a deal that they would combine their companies. AT&T stockholders would own about 71% of the combined entity, and Discovery would have the remaining 29%. Zaslav would take on the role of CEO looking over the conglomerate. Now, this is very telling because he's from Discovery and taking over Warner Brothers. So keep that in mind.
Okay.
For Warner Media's CEO, Jason Kilar, Zaslav was confident that he would be a great addition to the team when figuring out how to merge the companies. But in April, Kilar stepped down from his position. His reasonings were not specific. Jason Kilar, he was actually the founding CEO of Hulu and a senior vice president at Amazon before he became the CEO of Warner Media in 2020. Part of the reason for Kilar being hired at WB was to help streamline the company for the streaming age and the digital age. In an interview with Squawk the Street, Zaslav expressed his goals for the company, the new company. He wanted their streaming services to reach 400 million subscribers worldwide. So currently, with the combination of HBO Max, and Discovery Plus, they have just over 92 million subscribers. Discovery Plus takes into account about 22 million of those 92. To put it in perspective, Disney Plus has just over 151 million, and Netflix is still at the top with 220 million. But here's the kicker. In May, The Hollywood Reporter announced that with the merger they had created a goal to, quote, expect $3 billion in cost-saving synergies after 2 years and plan to pour the cash into creating streaming content.
And cost-saving synergies usually means we're going to synergize these two departments together by completely firing all the staff of one of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a lot of wish-washy language coming from him. I tried to get as many quotes from him as possible, but so many of them were just
mission
useless.
statement lyrics from
Yeah.
yeah, when it comes to like mergers and stuff, go check out Adam Conover's TikTok because he's done a lot of videos about entertainment mergers. He gets personally invested in this because his own show Adam Ruins Everything was canceled after a corporate merger between two entertainment companies. He is extremely outspoken about how like every time this merger happens, they have to do cost saving to make the new company new money by firing a whole bunch of people.
Yep, that's what it comes down to. In June 2021, it was announced that the new company would be Warner Brothers Discovery with the tagline, "The stuff that dreams are made of." A quote from the Maltese Falcon. Out of context, this sounds great. But within the movie, it's the moment where Detective Sam Spade reveals that his client, Bridget, is the killer. So
Well,
take that into consideration.
fitting, yeah.
That's amazing. I did not know this detail.
Yeah.
They were trying to warn us.
In a press conference, David Zaslav stated, quote, "Warner Brothers Discovery will aspire to be the most innovative, exciting, and fun place to tell stories in the world. That it is what the company will be about. We love the company's new name because it represents the combination of Warner Brothers' fabled 100-year legacy of creative, authentic storytelling and taking bold risks to bring to the most amazing stories of life with Discovery's global brand that has always stood brightly for integrity, innovation, and inspiration."
Yeah, when I think of Discovery content, integrity. That's
Yeah.
what I think of. When I see stuff like whatever reality show that they're putting on Discovery Channel these days, integrity.
Inspiration.
You want to talk about a garbage app? Because they have a garbage app.
Another quote from him: "There are so many wonderful creative and journalistic cultures that will help make up the Warner Brothers Discovery family. We believe it'll be the best and most exciting place in the world to tell big, important, and impactful stories across any genre and across any platform, film, television, and streaming." In November 2021, Discovery Streaming CEO JB Perrett discussed the possibility of making Discovery Plus and HBO Max into a bundle package deal, like with what Disney is doing with Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN, with the hope that in the future they would combine HBO and Discovery into one streaming service. Now, if you are not aware of Discovery or the channels that they put out there, here are the channels that they do. So obviously there's the Discovery Channel. That one's pretty obvious. There's Animal Planet, TLC.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's where the real junk comes in.
Which I will have to say, TLC, the Learning Channel, originally was a channel that was going to be dedicated to NASA. And this was a way for them to kind of communicate to everyone, to be like, hey, look at all the cool stuff that we're doing. But eventually it got bought out and was devolved into whatever it is now. They also own the Magnolia Network, HGTV, Food Network, Investigation Discovery, and CNN. In fact, Zaslav was the CEO in charge when they attempted to launch the news streaming service CNN Plus, and immediately shut down when the demand was so low.
Wow.
Although the official statement that was about why this service was terminated, even though it was like 2 weeks before the official merger, they stated that they wanted to focus on providing the service on a joint platform, such as what is going to be on HBO Max and Discovery, which is a lie. Yeah. On March 11th, 2022, the merger of Warner Brothers and Discovery was approved and official. When the new company, WBD, became available to be publicly traded, they unveiled their new logo designed by Cher Mayef and Gesmar and Havid. At the time, the only logo that was out there was a leaked presentation logo, which looks like the words Warner Brothers Discovery. It was put into like this 3D Superman font, and then it was in front of like a low-res Google search image of like clouds in the sky with the catchphrase, the stuff that dreams are made of, which was in like this default Helvetica font. But anyway, the new logo takes inspiration from the 1948 WB Shield, which first appeared in the film Key Largo. The classic blue and gold colors came back, and the font of the previous logo was then used, but then it was kind of like reshaped and then put into that wider format. It's a much more like minimalist approach to their like 3D rendered 90s logo, if you remember that.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Yep. The classic one.
Like,
Yeah.
honestly, like looking at their new logo, like I think that's one of the few things that they did right. It actually does look pretty good. With the companies finally merged, then came the issue of David Zaslav's promise to cut $3 billion in spending. During the Warner Brothers Discovery Town Hall in April 2022, which was hosted by Oprah Winfrey, she was able to ask Zaslav how he plans to merge the company.
Oprah Winfrey, not enough people point out how many awful people that she has associated and
Yeah.
endorsed.
And you get canceled, and you get canceled.
Well, she is invested in it because her network before was owned by Warner Brothers, and then when she did the own network, that was then bought out by Discovery.
Gotcha.
She has a lot invested in both companies, and when the mergers came together, and it's like, oh, well, mommy and dad are finally get together again. Yeah. She was able to ask Zaslav a bunch of questions, what cuts need to be made, and how exactly he will achieve the $3 billion cut. There was a lot of broad statements made by Zaslav,
Of course,
but there were
yeah.
a few things that were telling in what was going to happen. When it comes to merging the companies, obviously cuts are going to happen and some jobs will become redundant. That makes sense. But the way Zaslav put it was that WBD plans on restructuring the company with, quote, less layers. He seems to be in favor of combining and making one large streaming service rather than going forth and focusing on 3 separate streaming services. Zaslav did share the idea that a good portion of the cuts will come from streaming and television. A statement not fully understood at the time, but in hindsight, we now see that it's removing entire programs, including programs made exclusively for HBO Max, from the streaming platforms in order to avoid paying royalties or paying out actors and creatives entitled to the royalties.
Yeah.
Does anyone understand like paying out an actor for like instead of giving them royalties? Because that's I had to look up.
Is that the kind of thing that after the fact deals can be changed on that, where somebody was getting paid by royalties and then they just get paid out?
Yeah, eventually that's what's going to happen. So like there was one movie on there, I think it was like A Few Little Things or something like that. It was like the
A Million Little Things.
Was it A Million Little Things? It was the Denzel Washington movie, but that was one movie that was exclusively premiered on HBO because they didn't want to continually pay the royalties over the course of time. They just said, hey, whoever is entitled to a royalty, we're just going to pay you a bunch of money up front, and then that way you're not going to get anything else after that.
Yeah.
Which can be more or less expensive.
Looks like it was just called The Little Things.
The Little Things.
Oh,
Okay.
just kidding.
But I mean, it also is like a gamble in the long run because you don't know if like a project is going to suddenly get like this massive boost of like a cult following or something like that.
It was like one of Alec Guinness's most badass moves when he took on the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi was like, he didn't take a big paycheck when he did the movie at first. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to get a percentage of the royalties. And like that paid off so well for him.
Yeah.
But then lastly, a quote from Zaslav. It's going to take us a little bit of a time, and we're going to try and be as transparent and honest and direct with you as possible. We've been a company that's grown by acquisition. So on April 26, during an investor's call, Zaslav, he made a lot of comparisons to Netflix and how their stock was falling and their subscribers were leaving. Afterwards, it was reported that WBD suspended scripted development at TBS and TNT. Also that day, after the call, Zaslav purchased about $1 million in WBD stock. It was in May that news came out of executive positions being eliminated. Tom Asham, who is the president of Warner Brothers Global Kids, Young Adults, and Classics, he was let go. His department then merged into Warner Brothers Television. Also laid off was Brett Weitz, who is the general manager of TBS, TNT, and True TV, which has been consolidated with Discovery's Chief Lifestyle Brands Officer, Kathleen Finch. In July, head of pictures Toby Emmerich resigned from WBD. To take over his duties, former MGM executives Michael DeLuca and Pamela Abdi, they will primarily be overseeing Warner Brothers Pictures and New Line Cinema and temporarily oversee DC Films and Warner Animation Group units until new executives are hired.
Let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying here, because you're saying that David Zaslav bought a bunch of stock as the merger was starting to go through. So it seems like he's saying this merger is happening. All of these other executives are getting fired. I better buy a bunch of stock so that way I have more decision power to make myself in charge of this whole thing.
Essentially, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
We live in a system where the person who buys the most stock gets to automatically be the decision maker.
Yeah. I found this really interesting article, and I was surprised that it wasn't actually part of the Wikipedia. Because, like, whenever I do the research, like, I start at the Wikipedia, but, like, there's always the reference articles, and that's usually where I go to. But, like, there was one article, which I thought was pretty telling. So there was an interesting hire, and it was of Alan Horn as a consultant. Now, he's going to be working with Michael DeLuca and Pamela Adby.
Now, I know I've heard that name.
Yes. He was formerly WB's COO during the time that the Harry Potter franchise began and during the Dark Knight trilogy. Afterwards, he was a chairman at Disney starting in 2012, working with the company as they merged with Pixar, Marvel Studios, Lucasfilms, and 20th Century Fox Studios.
Okay.
He announced his retirement in October of 2021, but then Zaslav pulled him out of retirement to help with the WB and Discovery merger.
Okay.
Yeah. So in August, it was when the Warner Brothers Discovery merger got a lot of attention when they started cutting HBO Max original programs from their platform. On top of this, they were ending the development of new HBO Max original programs, a lot of which were being filmed in Europe, and many live-action children's programs were canceled mid-production. So the shittiest part of these announcements is that the production would find out about these cancellations without warning.
Yeah.
There are multiple accounts of crew members finding out that their jobs were gone by reading it in the news.
Wow.
Yeah. For some of these programs, they have the fortune of having a chance to shop around their shows and put it onto different platforms. But the two big cancellations from WBD is Batgirl and Scoob Holiday Haunt, because they don't have the luxury of shopping around because the IP is owned by Warner Brothers. In a statement from David Zaslav, he explained his reasonings for canceling Batgirl is because they are setting up a team to create a 10-year plan for the DC films, creating a universe similar to what Disney did with Marvel, which would be reasonable if you also canceled the other anticipating DC films like the Aquaman sequel, the Flash solo film, and Black Adam.
Yeah.
So
Everybody's going to go see The Flash. It doesn't matter that the main actor is
piece of shit.
is a monster person.
Yeah. Probably forming a cult as we speak.
Yeah.
Yep.
They were harboring them as well, like on set. They were
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, for reshoots. Yeah, we don't know where they are.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oof.
So then another way that he explained it was that it didn't fit the company's new vision for Warner Brothers or the DC franchise. He finally got to the point when he stated, quote, "We've seen, luckily, by having access now to all the data, how direct-to-streaming movies perform, and our conclusion is that expensive direct-to-streaming movies is no comparison to what happens when you launch a film in the motion picture in the theaters. So why not premiere the movie in theaters? Well, that would cost a lot more money. It would also cost money to market the film. Instead, the $90 million spent to make the film will now be used as a tax write-off."
Yep. It's funny to me that, it could be really expensive to promote the film. If you announced that it was coming to theaters a month from now and you did literally no promotion, it would still get a lot of butts in seats because a lot of people are aware of that movie right now.
So this is all like just gunning towards the $3 billion goal. For Scoob Holiday Haunt, the production costs reached about $40 million. And according to director Tony Savoni, he claims the film was, quote, practically finished. So far, WBD has totaled about $825 million in write-offs on a, quote, content impairments and development. So that's the last of my notes, but I do have, if you're very interested, I do have a list of all of the HBO original movies and TV shows that have been eliminated.
Wow.
So for the movies, we have An American Pickle.
An American Pickle? That was their first HBO Max original movie and they just pulled it off? My gosh.
I forgot that was a movie. I thought it was like a Veggie Tale.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. No, that's a cucumber.
Yeah.
There's Lockdown, Charmed City Kings, Moonshot, Super Intelligence, and The Witches, which came out in 2020.
Yeah, The Witches.
And the thing about that is the reason it's a cost-saving measure is because then they don't have to pay royalties. We have friends of the podcast like Kyle Carosa and Luke Ski who've been very public about my royalty checks are insanely small now because they pulled it off for
Wow.
crazy. So for the shows, there are 12 Dates of Christmas, About Last Night, Aquaman, King of Atlantis, which was a great series. There's Close Enough, Detention Adventures, Dodo, Ellen's Next Great Adventure, Elliot from Earth, Yzma and Roy, The Fugees, Generation Hustle, Generation, Infinity Train, Little Ellen.
Wow, Little Ellen.
That's okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, whatever.
I heard that the show itself is fine. It's like Lil Bill.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah. There's Mau Mau, Heroes of Pure Heart, Messi Goes Okido, Mia's Magic Playground, Mighty Magiswords, like we mentioned, My Dinner with Hervé, My Mom, Your Dad, Odu, Okay, K.O., Let's Be Heroes, The Ollie and Moon Show, Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures, Ravi Patel's Pursuit of Happiness, Make It Big, Make It Small, Share, Squish, Summer Camp Island, The Not Too Late Show with Elmo, The Runaway Bunny Special, Theodosia, Tig and Seek, Uncle Grandpa, Victor and Valentino, and Yabba Dabba Dinosaurs. Now, you may notice that this is a lot of children's
Yep.
programs that are being eliminated from HBO. Approximately 194 episodes of Sesame Street is leaving the program, but I will say that if you are a Sesame Street fan, if you're showing that to your kids, all of those episodes are still available on their YouTube channel. So you can
Okay.
still go there
Wow.
to watch it.
they're still available there now, because I know that a lot of these other children's programming had original stuff for YouTube that was pulled from YouTube.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube for now, but
Since we're on the topic of that, Mighty Magiswords was one of them.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
had an minisodes specifically on YouTube. If I'm not mistaken, those are the same ones that you can still purchase on iTunes, but they took all of the main seasons off of iTunes.
Yeah.
You can still buy them on Amazon Prime. I don't know for how much longer. And even as we're recording this, there's like a few days left before they get taken off of Hulu.
and it's something as well with like the Sesame Street thing. When Sesame Street got bought by HBO, there were a lot of people who were like, hey, this was a publicly funded television program. I don't think it should be owned by a corporation who could then do whatever they want with the media. And sure enough, that corporation is like, actually, we're just going to wipe all of this from existence so you don't have to think about it anymore. If this was a publicly funded thing, it should be open to the public, maybe.
Yeah. Which is, I think, why they kept it on YouTube
Yeah.
as something that's publicly available. Now, something that was breaking, and I don't have the full information of, and I know that we're going to be hearing about in the next few days, if not the next few weeks, is the cuts of Adult Swim shows. Now, this was breaking because the creator of the show, Tigtone, had actually come out publicly to say, like, my show's being removed from HBO Max.
Wow.
Oh, geez.
And this is just the beginning of other Adult Swim shows that are going to be cut in the future.
Final Space was also cut for tax purposes.
Wow, I didn't even hear about this. Oh my gosh.
This is why I'm a little nervous when it comes to like these movies that they announced like years ago. Like,
Yeah.
there is a trailer for the upcoming Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie, but who knows if that's even going to be making it to the platform. I know that they were originally going to do a home video release and then eventually put it on the streaming platform, but who knows at this point. Obviously, Rick and Morty's going to be fine. I don't think they're not going to worry about
high
that.
profile stuff is going to be up there, but like still you're playing with fire now, and if you are taking off these shows and if you're saying like you're going to be an HBO original, you're going to have creators lashing back to be like, I saw what you did with the other creators.
Yeah.
Like, I do not want this,
Yeah.
and I want to go to a different platform.
And it just seems like they were kind of doing this based off of contracts. So if any of these shows on Adult Swim are still like under this contract of like, oh yeah, we still got to pay some of these royalties. Okay, we'll take the ones that we're paying the most, get rid of those.
Yeah.
I think the most telling is David Zaslav's history of being the CEO of Discovery.
Yeah.
And knowing
Which-
the type of content that they put out
There
there.
was like an investor meeting where there was a whole lot of slides from that meeting that were leaked online that a lot of people were making fun of, but like of his philosophy. And like, I think one of the big ones was comparing the audience of HBO Max to the audience
Right,
of Discovery.
yes, that's what-
and it
that's
was
another
like
one.
the whole like fandom oriented versus genre oriented or something. The big one that got a lot of people talking was that HBO Max was male oriented
Yep.
and Discovery was female oriented,
I
under
didn't
the
realize that,
assumption
yeah.
Yep.
that women only like to watch reality shows, Alexa.
Yeah.
So
Listen,
you're not allowed to watch any genre stuff. So
It's a misconception. I don't only like reality shows. It's just part of it.
No, but David Zaslav says that you only like reality
That's
unscripted
true.
shows.
Yeah. I think he's right.
and you don't watch narrative shows.
Yeah.
I mean, what woman actually is interested in a superhero show like Harley Quinn? Why would that be female oriented
Right?
at all?
Yeah.
Why would I want to watch, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy kiss all the time? Why would I want that?
Yeah, knowing that he has this reality TV background, I worry a lot about his mentality forward. And when he's talking about his company now, like he brings up how many Oscars and Emmys, which mostly Warner Brothers has won
Yeah.
throughout the 100+ years that they've been around. And it's aggravating to be like, you didn't earn that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't do any of that. Like, yes, Warner Brothers did that. The people before you push for that type of content. And we're worried that you are essentially just taking away what is quality content so that you can create essentially what is cheap stories that hopefully a lot of people will watch. And I've even heard like news reporters at CNN, they've talked about wanting to dive deeper into a story. And when they wanted to do so, CNN would cut them off to be like, oh no, we're just doing breaking news, and that's really about it. Wasn't CNN said recently where they're like, we're going to stop doing the breaking news things because we do it too much?
Oh, really?
I think so.
I don't know.
It was something like that. But they like cut back and they're like, not everything's breaking news. So we're just going to cut back on that.
Yeah.
But a lot of reporters, journalists who are like, I had to go to a different company that would allow me to actually report the story correctly.
Yeah.
Dan, did you mention the movies and shows that were upcoming projects that were canceled?
I mean, the two big ones, but no, I haven't.
So there was a few other ones because I've been looking through lists while we've been talking, and there's like quite a bit of them. Like I didn't realize they were making an Amazing World of Gumball movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was apparently going to be a bunch of like holiday Christmas specials besides like the Scooby-Doo movie. It was going to be Batman Christmas special. Did I do that to the holidays? A Steve Urkel story, which was going to be animated. Oh yeah, and House Party. I forgot they were going to do a House Party movie. Reboot, I guess. The bigger ones that I realized was that they had 2 Looney Tunes movies that they were planning on doing. One is called The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, which is going to be just like a fully animated film. The other one was Bye Bye Bunny, a Looney Tunes musical.
Amazing.
Which, if you guys have seen the Daffy Duck CGI animated short that they did a few years back, the Hungarian dance, Hungarian Rhapsody, that's what I was thinking of. I'm a little frustrated because for one, I want new Looney Tunes content. And 2, I want new Looney Tunes content with musicals, okay?
Yeah.
More of that, please.
Yeah, this is one of the big problems with modern day capitalism and the infinite growth mindset, that every company has to always be growing and always be showing growth to investors, because it means that at a certain point, the only way to get any growth is by cutting costs. And when you do that, you ultimately end up making the company worse in the long run. There's no room for having a stable company. And the only thing you do is cut costs and then eventually crash and burn and bankrupt and let somebody else buy you up. And it's just this constant wave that just keeps destroying things in capitalism. And the other thing to note about this story is that the reason that they were able to make this decision for Batgirl is because they can call it a tax write-off by claiming it as a loss, and so get a tax write-off. Because, as a reminder that there is actually socialism in America, it just only exists for companies and the rich, and it doesn't exist for everybody else. This is where antitrust laws are supposed to come in to be able to prevent stuff like this from happening, to be able to have a healthy industry with a lot of companies, having competition and developing better stories, in this case, better products. On a big note, the antitrust laws have not been enforced at all for years. There are so many mergers over the last couple of years that should not have gone through. I mean, especially when you look at communications companies, like there's a lot of like cell phone company mergers that should not have gone through. They just went through anyways because the people who are making those decisions in our government are not doing it. Probably own a lot of stock in those companies.
Yeah, that part. If they aren't making money, they're not going to care. But if they are making money, then
it's all intertwined, unfortunately.
So unfortunately, we are going to see a lot of creators suffer. We're already seeing it with a lot of animators here in Los Angeles. So with Netflix eliminating their animation department, at least the adult animation department, Warner Brothers cutting back on just like everything, and especially children's program, which relies on animators, like that's being taken away as well. Like they are going to have no choice but to work for the mouse, and who knows what the future of that's going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, D23 did show off a lot of animated shows, at least. So they're
because they got an influx of new animators.
I mean, yeah. It hurts everybody. It hurts the people who work on these things that are very passionate about it. It hurts the people who want to purchase that. Ultimately, it's going to affect the people at the very top, like eventually, minimally compared to everybody else, but still.
Well, it won't, because they'll just be able to go get jobs as CEOs somewhere else.
It's kind of like the producers, where it's like you can make more money with a flop than with a hit.
Yeah.
Just on a whole nother level of scum.
But you know what? All of this means is that there's going to be a lot more episodes of How Did This Not Get Made coming.
That's true.
So many more stories for us to talk about.
We're going to have so much content.
For a sad reason.
overall, the only thing that can really solve this is you have to take out David Zaslav. You have to make him step down. He can be a chairman, but like he cannot be the one in charge.
Yeah.
You need someone who is geared in the way that knowing that scripted content is sustainable.
Yeah.
And David Zaslav does not see this. He is seeing what is going to give him a reward and a cookie now, and not thinking well down the road as to like, why is it that people are loving what we mentioned before? Why do we love HBO Max now? It's because of the backlog of content that was created years before. And we're not going to revisit cheaply made reality television shows. We are going to go back to the movies, the TV shows that we ultimately love. And that was being created right now is content that was sustainable. And he's taking that away because he needs to hit that $3 billion goal, which he should have never promised in the first place.
There's a lot of people who could be David Zaslavs. I heard somebody talking about on a podcast how Hollywood was funded by rich people with lots of money to spend, but it used to be a lot of rich people who cared about movies were willing to take losses if it meant good stuff happening. And now it's been almost completely consumed by people who everything is just what it means for the numbers on the page, as opposed to actually what it could mean. And there's a long term thinking that would have to play in to make artistic things that a lot of the people who are thinking about the money first just don't act on. Well, I think that's going to be wrapping up this episode. So thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate everybody sticking around with us, and hopefully you learned something in this episode. I certainly learned a couple of details about this story that I didn't know before, and I thought I was pretty clued into what was going on.
This is what I wanted to reveal to everyone is like, this is like the big picture when you step back and you're just like, we can now better clearly see like what is the storm that is brewing.
Yeah.
And it does not look good. So
show this episode to anybody who doesn't quite understand the gravity of the situation.
Yeah. If you want to find more episodes of this podcast, you can go check out our website, pipedreampodcasts.com, which is, of course, the home of Come On Fahooglepods, Pod Made You Special, Escape from Vault Disney, and the Mystery Shack Look Back. While you're there, you can find links to our social media pages. We are on Twitter at HDTNGM. We're on Instagram at How Did This Not Get Made? And send us your emails, notgetmade@gmail.com. I believe at the time you're listening to this, we are still prepping for our emails episode. So send us your corrections, your suggestions for future episodes, and anything else you want to tell us. We also super appreciate everybody who has been supporting us on Patreon. You can go check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/pipedreampodcasts, or find that link on our website. We have a special monthly bonus show that goes out every month, and the September Unclogged, the September bonus show, is sort of a companion piece to this, where we celebrate our favorite pieces of physical media and talk about what makes them special and finding that. So that was a really fun discussion that I think might be a good positive counterpoint to this discussion of doom and gloom in media. So thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
It's over.